Kathy Darnell is going to be our next person who'll be presenting.
All
Go ahead,
right.
Kathy. The floor is yours.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Elke. And again, thank you all for joining me today. I'm coming to you from the North Dallas area, and I look forward to sharing with you some of the things that my team does behind the scenes to help your retirement plan consultant.
Kathy, I'm
Um,
going to pause real quick. I'm sorry. Before we get started, it
mhm.
just appeared that we're having a technical glitch with your presentation. So despite our best efforts, there we go. Let's see if we can you go to the next slide and let's make sure that's you?
Sure. Is that working better?
Okay, go to your first slide and I think we got it now. Thank you, Kathy. Okay.
Okay, sure. All right. Okay. So when I think about the teams here at Definiti, I thought of this quote that talks about no man is an island and that we're all part of a bigger main group. And that's definitely how I see Definiti, because it is a team environment where we're all working together, even though you may not talk to all of us. There's many people working behind the scenes for your 401k plan or your retirement plan. And this means that the NASCAR driver can't be successful without the pit crew, and the quarterback can't win without the offensive line. And if we're making a recipe, it's just not going to work if you don't have all the ingredients. And if you're working on a puzzle, it's going to get really frustrating if you realize you're missing pieces. So today I will talk to you about the Retirement Plan Associates. That's a team that I have the pleasure of working with, and we're called RPA for short. So we take care of the smaller details so that your retirement plan consultant or specialist can do the heavy lifting. We help to make sure your plan complies with Department of Labor and IRS regulations. And once you complete your year-end data collection, then that's when my team steps in. So to start off with, we'll go over the census data. So once you complete your data collection and you hit that submit button, then that's when my team steps in and starts looking at the data. And so I'll just go over the census and what's some important information that we're looking for. So to start off with the social security number, we do need the full social. So we ask that it's not masked. And the information is very secure when you're using our plan sponsor link. So it's perfectly safe to use full social. And then dates are very important because this determines eligibility and vesting. Some things we see sometimes is there may be a date of rehire without a date of termination. So that might be something that would cause us to have to stop and ask questions. So we ask that whenever you are putting in a date of rehire, that there should be a date of termination. And also, if you have a situation where an employee didn't actually terminate, maybe they transferred from one location or division to another, then there should not be a termination date and a rehire date. We like to maintain their original date of hire because this is important for vesting and eligibility. So if you will still continue to report that original hire date, and if it's just a transfer, then we don't need, a rehire date and a termination date. Their service just continues, for our purposes. And then, as I mentioned, if there's a date of rehire, we would expect to see a date of termination. And then hours, we need actual hours worked for the entire year, just like we're asking for compensation, deferrals, and match for the entire year. And as Susan was just talking about with the long-term part-time employees, it's especially critical to report hours, even if you consider the employee to be part-time. We still need anyone that received W-2 wages, or it could be K-1 or Schedule C, but it's very important to include everyone that received W-2 wages, even if they just worked a short amount of time. We will see that with their hire date and termination date. So hours have always been important, but they're especially important with the Secure 2.0. So that kind of takes care of the dates and what we're looking for there. And then next we go into compensation. So what we are looking for in compensation is gross compensation. So this would be that figure before any deductions are taken out of the employee's paycheck. So it's not necessarily what's on the W-2. Years ago, we could just look at a certain box and get that number. But now there's a lot more to it. So in order to ensure that you're giving us gross compensation, the best thing to do is to check with your payroll manager or your CPA to confirm that what you're providing us is true gross. And then we move on to excluded compensation. And this depends on your plan document. So you'd want to go to your plan document, and there's a section that talks about certain types of compensation that's excluded. So this might be bonuses, overtime, commission. So if your plan excludes those type of payments, then we would want you to list those amounts on the census. Sometimes we'll see where a plan excludes something and there's all zeros or it's blank in that column. And we don't like to assume that that means there wasn't anything to report. So chances are your retirement plan consultant would still reach out to you to confirm if your plan document has excluded compensation, that you really didn't have any that year. So it might be helpful, just you could leave a note on the plan sponsor link that just says we don't have any excluded compensation to report. And that would help us just be able to continue on and not have to confirm that. And then we have what's called pre-entry compensation. And this is something that you'd also want to refer to your plan document. And what this means is that if your plan excludes compensation prior to the date a participant enters the plan, then you would list that portion of the participant's compensation prior to their entry date. So for example, if the employee became eligible on July 1st of this year, and if your plan excludes that pre-entry compensation, you would just report in that column that compensation from January to June. You're still going to report their gross in that prior column, but this is just for that amount prior to them entering the plan. Whether they participated or not, that's what you would enter on that column. So that kind of takes care of the different compensation. There's the gross compensation, any excluded amounts that your document might exclude, and then pre-entry for anyone entering the plan that plan year. Then we go on to the section that's going to ask about contributions. So we would start off with pre-tax deferrals and Roth, and we do need those separated. So deferrals would be reported, Roth would be reported in a separate column. And so we're going to compare what your payroll system has to what's reported on the financial information. So this would be coming from your records so that we can compare to your financial provider. And any employer contributions, anything that you funded throughout the year, which could be a discretionary match, safe harbor, which could be a safe harbor match or 3% safe harbor, or if you funded profit sharing throughout the year, you would list those amounts in that column. And then if your company has a Section 125 cafeteria plan, you would enter the total of all the 125 contributions in that column. And again, you could refer to your payroll department to determine if that's applicable for your plan. And we have seen where on occasion there's maybe deferrals that are put in the profit sharing column. So it really helps us out a lot as we're reviewing your information. If all the contributions can be put in the correct column, that'll just help speed things along so that your retirement plan consultant can start working on the plan. And then the last sections that may not apply to everyone is company division. If you'd like us to track locations, we can do that, and you can put the name of a division, or if it's a certain number, you can list that in that column. And then if you have any leased or union employees, you could just indicate yes. If there was a date of death that you need to report. And then in the data collection questions, those are important because that'll tell us about ownership, any family members that have ownership. And so every year we're looking at those questions, and we try to narrow them down and make them as short as possible. So what's out there is important. Like I said, we try to make them as concise as we can. And so those are very important to answer those data collection questions. And then as we're going through all this, if anything appears to be missing at our first review, then the retirement plan consultant will reach out to you as soon as possible so that we can get any questions cleared up, pretty quickly in the beginning. Okay, and then we would move on to the financial information. So we work closely with your investment provider to obtain the year-end financial information. So we are going to compare what they show was deposited compared to what you reported on the census. And this is just a good checks and balance because we have found where if there was maybe a missed deposit, or if it was just an error and someone's pre-tax deferral got deposited into Roth. This is a time when your consultant is checking for those things. So that's why we're comparing both your information and the investment provider's information. And same thing with employer. We're making sure what your records show matches, and then your consultant will go on further to make sure the calculation was done correctly and that everyone that should have received a contribution did. And if you have assets with self-directed brokerage, throughout the year, we are scanning those in, saving them to the client folders. So hopefully by the end of the year, we've got all the statements and we're ready to go with our year-end valuation. And the statements can be provided. There's many different ways. You can upload them to the plan sponsor link. They can be faxed, mailed, emailed securely. So if you do have assets in a brokerage account or self-directed, we ask that we're copied on those or given those copies throughout the year. And again, that will just help speed up the process. And then another step that my team is involved with is if an extension does need to be filed, then we would prepare the extension, and that gets forwarded to our administrative services team to be mailed out. Okay, and then finally, we'll go over vesting. So once your retirement plan consultant has finished with the 5,500 and the valuation, then my team will step back in to update vesting. So the vesting depends on your investment provider. They will have parameters on what information they need. So sometimes they want hours, years of service, percentage. So we work with your investment provider to determine what information they need. And just to keep in mind with hours, this is usually something that you would be updating through your payroll. So if you're set up to update vesting with hours, then that should be an automatic process that's happening with your investment provider. So we wouldn't be doing that on an annual basis. But you can always check with your retirement plan consultant if you're not sure or your investment provider, which method they're using to update vesting. And so when Definiti maintains vesting, we update on an annual basis for the completed year. So for example, currently we're updating vesting as of 12/31/2022 for calendar year plans. So this means that your participant may have already earned another year of vesting compared to what their statement shows. So if your participant comes to you and says, my vesting is not correct, that could be why, because what's on their statement would have been as of the last year that was completed. And so, there's a very good explanation. It just hasn't been updated yet for this year that we're currently in. So if you have vesting questions, if a participant comes to you, you can reach out to your retirement plan consultant and we will verify that what we're showing is correct. And we do ask that the participants don't contact us directly because we're not able to verify their identity. So we just want to make sure we're very careful with their information. And so we can work with you if you have a participant that has a question about their vesting. And a few other things to note, if you're a Definiti record keeping client, we do have a participant service center that can assist participants. So they can call, and we are set up to confirm the Definiti record keeping participants, and we can help them directly. And as just an additional assurance that if Definiti is involved in the withdrawal process, that there is an additional verification when a distribution or loan is requested. So this is just another layer to make sure that the vesting is correct before a loan or distribution is processed.